So this woman said that her and her boyfriend were on a road trip and they didn't have a specific destination. So she decided, okay, since we don't have a specific destination and we're passing by this bed and breakfast, maybe we should just stay here. We've been sleeping in the car for the past few days. Let's sleep in an actual bed. So the first thing that she noticed when they get to the small parking lot of the bed and breakfast is that there's only one car. They get inside the bed and breakfast, and I don't know if any of you have ever been to a bed and breakfast, but most of the time they have people sign in just so they can keep track of the people who, have stayed there. Fast forward, she said first impression of the person who owned the bed and breakfast was really creepy. She wouldn't stop smiling. She said this woman just, was super pretty, but wouldn't stop smiling at them, and she thought that was weird. Fast forward again, they get shown upstairs, they get ready for bed and go to sleep immediately. She gets to sleep, but she said that she woke up to someone singing in her ear. So, of course, she sits up in the bed, scans the room. She doesn't see anyone. Her boyfriend is asleep, and she lays back down. She couldn't get to sleep again because she kept hearing humming. And this time she sat up in the bed, and across from the bed, she saw a woman sitting in front of the vanity mirror. She said every single time she blinked, this woman was in a different area of the room. That right there would have made me just go ahead and leave my luggage too. Yeah. She said as soon as she blinked, the woman got up from the vanity and was standing next to her luggage. Then she blinked again, and the woman was wearing some of her clothes. So not only is she scary, she a thief too. I don't like it. She tries to wake her boyfriend up, but he is just out like a light. He wouldn't budge. And so she decides she's going to get up and try to walk towards the woman. She says every single step she took, the woman's neck got longer. While this woman's neck is getting longer, she's still brushing her hair in front of the vanity. The woman says she got so close she could literally reach out and touch her. I just want to know why you wanted to do that anyway. Fast forward, she tried to reach out and touch the woman, and the woman let out this really high-pitched scream. And she said that's all she remembers, and then she woke up the next morning on the floor. It's morning time now, and it's time for breakfast. She tells her boyfriend about what happened. Her boyfriend was like, I think it was just a nightmare because, this is the first time we've slept in a bed in like 4 days. The owner is the one that's cooking them breakfast. So the owner hears them talking about it, and she comes over and she says she gives me a hard time too. I'm surprised that she allows you guys to stay through the night. What do you mean allowed? She said that she can never get anyone to stay through the night. She hasn't gotten anyone to stay through the night in years. The boyfriend convinces her to stay one more night because he said he wanted to rest a little more in a bed. She says she woke up in the middle of the night to someone burning her on her forearm. She looks up, and it's the woman that she saw sitting in front of the vanity. Now, she says this woman is on top of her, and the woman has her hand placed over her mouth. She said as soon as the woman removed her hand from her mouth, her lips were it's almost like they were glued shut. The woman said she was absolutely terrified, and she tried her hardest to reach out and touch her boyfriend, but nothing worked. Nothing woke him up. She looks up at the woman, and she said that her neck is getting longer again and her skin is changing this time. Then she said she looked in her mouth and she noticed that she has super razor sharp shark teeth. She wakes her boyfriend up finally, and she tells him, I want to leave right this second. I don't want to wait. So he jumps up. They start putting things in the car. And while they're packing up the car, guess who is standing right there watching them? You guessed it. The long neck demon. That is insane. She said that there's a part 2. She's going to give more information on what happened when she got home.
My entire page is pretty much talking about spooky Florida and the spooky South in general, but I get a lot of other videos about haunted Florida locations because of the nature of my content. And with all the love in my heart, I just have to say, I need some of y'all to step your game up a little bit, okay? Just a little bit. I had a video pop up on my FYP today, and it was about, a bunch of different strange things about Florida, and there is so much. There is so much you could fit in there. One of them was like the monkeys in Ocala National Forest. All the fucking shit that goes on in that forest, and you want to talk about the monkeys? Another was like how many alligators are in this state. And yes, the alligators are cool. I agree. I love them. But bro. And if you just don't know about some of the cool stuff, that's fine. That's okay. You can ask or, pay attention to my page or other people's pages and learn. But how dare you go viral saying that the coolest thing about Florida is the amount of lightning strikes we get. And I'm not even talking about the paranormal stuff because I know a lot of people just aren't into that. There is weird history all over the state. Coral Castle, the End Timers cult. Actually, take your pick out of multiple cults in Florida. The Devil's Tree and the true crime cases connected to that. And speaking of true crime cases, Florida is sadly a true crime junkie's wet dream. And I talk about those cases and I try my best to give respect to those victims and to their families and to do it in a way that like brings light to the situation without just focusing on a piece of shit serial killer. But there are a lot, man. There are a lot. They didn't even mention the sinkholes. They did not even mention the sinkholes that swallow entire houses. But my personal favorites are always the urban legends of Florida because they are just so out there. You have the Mossman of MacDill Air Force Base here in Tampa. You have Squallies out of Naples. You have the phantom bells ringing out in the Everglades as well as in Ocala National Forest. And then you've got Bellamy Bridge, Valco Road, the Witch's Wall, and hundreds of ghost towns. Hundreds all over the state. Like, take your fucking pick of which area, and I guarantee there's a ghost town there. Respectfully, don't you ever do spooky Florida like that again. Never. The fucking monkeys.
This story is the perfect example of why you shouldn't go through anyone's laptop because all you're going to do is either one, hurt your feelings, or two, scare yourself. Lip gloss on so I can run this mouth. Now let me focus. Scary story time, Fright Night Files. This email was sent to me by Joanne. I'm just going to read it as it is because it is lengthy, but you're going to want to hear all of it because it's very unsettling. My mother passed away in March. She lived alone, and when we went to clean out her house, my brother found her laptop under the bed. It wasn't password protected. We were going through it looking for any documents, bank accounts, things like that. When I found a folder on her desktop, she'd simply labeled read last. Inside was one thing, a saved email thread. I'm going to send it to you in order. I need somebody else to have seen this because my brother refuses to talk about it and I can't stop thinking about it. I know this is a lot, but I don't know what else to do. Now, the first email says, from Margaret, and then she redacted who it was sent to. And it says September 4th. I don't know if this is real, but I'm writing anyway. I found this address written on a piece of paper inside a library book I checked out. The note said, if you have been having the dream, right here. Tell us what you saw. You are not alone. I have been having the dream for 11 weeks. I don't know who else to tell. My daughter thinks I'm not sleeping well. My doctor says it's grief. My husband passed in June and that the mind does strange things when we lose someone. I have accepted all of that. But the dream is the same every time and it has details in it that I don't know how to explain away. In the dream, I am in my house, but the house is wrong. Not visually wrong. It looks exactly right, but the rooms are in the wrong order. The kitchen is where the bedroom should be. The back door opens to the front door. I know something is off, but I can't locate the error. I walk through every room trying to find what's wrong and never find it. At the end of the dream, every time, I find a room I don't recognize. It's not a room that exists in my house. It's small. It has one window, and there is a chair facing the window. Someone is sitting in the chair with their back to me. I can never see their face, and every time right before I wake up, the person in the chair says one sentence, the same sentence, every time. I'm not going to write what they say, not yet. I want to know first if anyone else has seen this room. Redacted to Margaret, September 6th. Yes, we have seen this room. There are currently 84 people in this correspondence who have described the same house, the same wrong order of rooms, the same small room at the end. 61 of them have described the chair. 47 have described the figure. You are not losing your mind. You are not grief dreaming. We don't know yet what this is, but we have been collecting accounts for 3 years, and the consistency across all of them is something that cannot be explained by coincidence or shared cultural imagery. Please tell us what the figure says. It's important. Not everyone hears it, and we need to understand who does and why. You're not alone in this room. The correspondence. The woman that emailed me said, there are 9 more emails where my mother goes back and forth with this address asking questions. Who runs this? How did you find these people? What do you mean by correspondence? They give partial answers. I'm going to skip to the one where she tells them what the figure says because that's the one my brother and I got stuck on. September 19th. And then she titled it What It Says. All right, I've decided to trust you. Here's what the figure in the chair says every time, word for word. I have it memorized because I've heard it 83 nights in a row now. It says, "You already know the way out. You found it once and you forgot. The room remembers even if you don't. That's it. That's all. And then I wake up. What does it mean? Do others hear the same sentence?" Margaret. September 19th, what it says. "No, that is not what the others hear. The others hear their own names spoken once. Some hear nothing at all. A small number, fewer than 10 across all our accounts, hear a full sentence. Those accounts concern us the most because the people who hear sentences are the ones who eventually find the door. We need to ask you something important. In the dream, when you are walking through the wrong house, have you ever tried to leave, gone to the front door or a window, and tried to actually exit?" The correspondence. On September 22nd, "Yes, every time. Every door I open leads back inside. I've tried windows too. They open, but there's nothing outside them. Not darkness, just nothing. Like the house is the only thing that exists, and everything beyond it is just the idea of an outside. Why does finding the door concern you? That sounds like a good thing, Margaret." Then they write back on September 25th. "We have had 11 correspondents find the door. Of those 11, 7 stopped writing to us within 2 weeks of finding it. Not unsubscribed, not a goodbye. They simply stopped mid-conversation and did not respond to follow up. 2 of the remaining 4 told us what is on the other side of the door before they also stopped writing. We're not going to tell you what they described. Not because we want to withhold it, but because we have a theory, which we cannot yet prove, that knowing changes what you find there. We don't want to contaminate your account. What we will tell you is this. The 2 people who described it said it was not frightening. They said it felt like a place they had been before. One of them said it felt like the place you are just before you're born, which we understand is not a thing a person can remember, and yet she said it with complete certainty. Margaret, we want to ask you to do something difficult. We want you to try, the next time you have the dream, to go back to the small room, to sit in the second chair. There's always a second chair, even if you haven't noticed it, and wait. Not to look for the door, not to wake up, just wait. We believe the figure has something else to say to you. We believe it has been waiting for you to stop leaving." The correspondence. Well, Joanne, she said, "There are 14 more emails after this one where my mother talks about trying to do what they asked. She described the dream changing, getting longer, the rooms multiplying, the figure in the chair beginning to turn. She sounds excited in a way that reading it now scares me more than anything else in this thread. She sounds like someone who has found a project, something to focus on after losing my dad, and I think that's maybe what made her keep going. The last email she sent is dated February 9th. She died March 2nd. Her doctor said it was her heart. She had no history of heart problems. This is her last email. February 9th. I found the door. I want to write this down while I can still feel it clearly. Last night I sat in the second chair. The figure didn't speak for a long time. We just sat there together facing the window and the nothing outside it. And then it reached out without turning, without looking at me, and it put its hand over mine on the armrest. The hand was very cold and very familiar. I knew the hand. I've held that hand 10,000 times. I don't need to tell you whose hand it was because I think you already know. Because I think some of you have been there too and felt the same thing and been too afraid to write it down." Said with his voice exactly, "You found it once and you forgot. You were here when you were very small, before the world had a name for you, before you knew what a door was. You are allowed to come back, but not through the dream. The dream is just how we get your attention." I asked where the door actually was. It said, he said, and I'm writing this exactly, "You've been standing in it." And I woke up and I was standing in the middle of my bedroom. I hadn't sleepwalked in 60 years, not since I was a child. I was standing facing the wall, and on the wall there was a mark I have never seen before, about the height of a doorknob, like something had been pressed there from the outside, from the other side. I'm not scared. That's what I most want to say. I expected to be scared, and I'm not. I feel like I've been looking for something my whole life without knowing I was looking. And knowing its shape makes the looking feel worth it. I'm going back tonight, Margaret. There's no reply from the correspondence to the last email. I tried replying to the address myself. It bounced. The domain doesn't exist anymore. My brother thinks we should leave it alone. He said Mom was grieving and she found some online group and it gave her comfort and she's gone now and we should let her have it. He's not wrong, but here's the thing, I can't let go of it. While we were cleaning out her bedroom, the day we found her laptop, I was taking down the curtains so we could wash them, and I saw the wall behind where the curtains had been. The wall that had been directly in front of her if she was standing in the middle of the room facing it. There was a mark on the wall about the height of a doorknob, a small flat impression in the drywall, like something had pressed against it very hard from behind. The mark was on the wrong side of the wall. The wall is an exterior wall. There's nothing behind it but the outside. My mother said she wasn't scared. I'm choosing to believe her. I have to, because the alternative, the thing I lie awake thinking about, is that she found the door and she went through it. And what I've been trying to decide every night since we buried her is whether that's the most terrifying thing I've ever heard or whether it's the most beautiful. I don't know which one it is. I don't know if I ever will. I haven't been sleeping well lately. Have you heard of this dream before? Could you share this and see if anyone else has experienced this or knows of someone that has? Any of you out there? Do you know what she's talking about? Have you heard this dream before? Have you had this dream? I haven't. I don't know what's going on. If you've got any information or any questions about this or you want to discuss this more, let me know in the comments.
The following story scares me because it's like, what do you mean don't respond to a voice that you don't recognize? Like, I feel like it's second nature to respond when you hear someone call your name. Or if you're like me, you're gonna and what the fuck out of somebody that's calling you. Sometimes when I'm on the verge of like awake and asleep, I tend to hear my mom's voice say, Lati, and it like jolts me. Does anybody have an explanation for that, or am I just fucking crazy? So this girl says that growing up, her entire family have always been skeptic. They didn't believe in the paranormal. Now, they did go to church and they would always have like priests come to their house and bless it and things like that. She also says that her mom had like a cleansing friend that would come to the house and also cleanse it, but like, wouldn't that be paranormal, or am I crazy? Am I dumb? I'm not, I don't know much about the topic, but that doesn't sound like it's not paranormal. Anyway, I'm so off topic. Let me continue with the story. So this girl says that she would ask her mom why she would have those kind of rituals where her friend would come over and cleanse the house, but her mom would ignore her and just basically never give her a straight answer about the topic. Okay, makes sense now. She says that her dad was a truck driver, so most nights he would not be home. If anything, he would be home like 1 or 2 days a week. At the time, her mom also suffered from insomnia, so most nights she would actually accompany her mom so that she didn't feel lonely, or sometimes she would just stay up herself and wouldn't be in the same room as her, but she just wanted her mom to feel comfort knowing that somebody else was awake with her. So there was one night where she didn't stay up with her mom and she ended up going to sleep, but she was awoken by someone calling out her name. She said that it didn't sound evil, it sounded very maternal. So after somebody called her name, she then said that she felt really soft hands touching her face, but the only thing was that the hands were really, really cold. She said that these hands touching her face were very delicate. They weren't trying to harm her, but she felt how cold they were on her face. Eventually, she did fall back to sleep, but then she got jolted awake because she heard her name being screamed out from the first floor of the house. She opened the door to her bedroom and she started walking towards the hallway where the stairs were going to lead down to the first floor. So as she's walking closer and closer to where she can take the steps down, she was listening to where the TV was on, but it almost sounded like somebody was switching the channels. She tried to rush because she thought that maybe her mom was down there and she had called her and she really needed her for something. When she gets to the third step trying to go down the stairs, she realizes that it's dark down there. The TV was not on and she couldn't see anything. In that moment, she got really scared, so she decided to go back up the stairs to go back into her bedroom. However, the moment where she turns around and she's about to go up the stairs again, she realizes that the TV in the living room turned on. She turned to look into the living room and that is where she sees it. There is a little boy sitting on the couch looking up at her and smiling at her. Mind you, she has never seen this little boy ever in life. She said that she doesn't know how she did it because in that moment she was so scared she felt like she was paralyzed, but somehow she was able to run into her bedroom, get underneath the covers, and she just started praying. She couldn't tell anybody what happened. She didn't know how to tell anybody what had happened, but the following morning the dad was already gonna go back to work, and as her and her mom and her sibling were saying goodbye to the dad by the front door, all three of them heard a voice from inside the house that they had never heard before. The voice was of a little kid and it said, "Mom, Mom, please come." The mom actually made the mistake of responding to the voice, and not just that, but walking towards where they heard it. She said that they all knew that you shouldn't respond to a voice that you don't recognize, that they had been told this a lot, and I guess the mom made that mistake because when she went to respond to it, she doesn't know what she told it, but all they saw was a silhouette of a little boy, almost like a shadow figure, running out of there. And all three of them saw this. Ever since then, things that they cannot explain is happening in that house. And they're seeing this kid more and more, almost like it's manifesting itself more now. But remember that the mom had this cleanser friend, and they had her over, and the lady basically told them that this little boy was not here. It was brought by their dad. I guess somewhere where the dad was truck driving, this little boy got attached to the dad and is now inside of the house with them. They have no idea when or how this could have happened. They also don't know if maybe one day this will end. Hopefully it does, but they have no idea.
7th floor of the Basin Park Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, which is arguably one of the most haunted places in the U.S., is not just haunted. It's a portal, according to someone named Dee Dee, who sent me the submission for Spooky Scary Story Time, and she told me about the creepiest thing that happened while she worked there. And she says she's actually used to paranormal activity at this hotel. Spirits, energy, presences, it's all sort of part of the job, but a lot of people that work there get away with the unexplained occurrences there by just not believing. She says she believes. And while she was working at the Lucky 7 bar in this hotel, also Basin Park Hotel, please don't come for me, please don't sue me, this is all alleged. She actually got so used to some of the spirits or presences she felt while working the bar that she just called them her regulars. They were harmless, they were residual, they were just sort of passing through. She would do things like flicker the lights, or she would hear their footsteps, and she said she actually got comfortable with some of these presences. They just felt like the energy shifted when they entered a room, and one in particular she got very comfortable with, and she named him Arthur. And she said she felt this general aura of like protection with him, like sort of like he was her Casper. She said he would come in around the same time every single night with the same feeling and the same energy, and she would greet him. She would be like, "Hey, how are you?" Same as any bartender would with a regular walking into the bar, and that was it. He would just be there. He was calm, he was neutral. She never felt anything besides peace when he was around, which is why when she experienced something else, she knew it wasn't Arthur. She knew that this other presence was stronger and that it wanted to harm her. She said she was working alone and the AC wasn't doing much. It was a really hot night. Fans were running, the doors were cracked open. They were trying to catch any breeze they could, but she said the room felt suffocating. The bar was completely empty, and she was sitting at a table near the bar facing the door, just kind of playing on her phone. Then she heard the door open, and then there was the sound of footsteps. She looked up, she saw the door was open, but no one had entered, and she's like, it's not a big deal. It's probably just Arthur. It's probably just one of the regulars. It was a little earlier than Arthur normally came in, and she's like, no, don't think anything of it. And again, this paranormal activity is normal at this hotel. She says anyone that works there can tell you this. So anyway, she goes back to looking at her phone, not freaking out yet. Why would she? This happens all the time. And she heard the sound of a pool ball being cracked across the table. It was deliberate, like someone had lined up a shot and then taken it. And so she looks over and she sees one of the balls rolling across the pool table. And of course, she's still completely alone in the bar. And this was more intense activity than she was used to. Normally, she just felt a presence. But all of a sudden, the entire bar seemed to come alive at once. There were footsteps in every direction. Glasses were clinking behind the bar. Pool balls across each table were striking and scattering in every direction. And it sounded like there was laughter coming from at least 20 people all around the bar. She said if she had been standing outside the door, it would have sounded like a group of people had just flooded the bar all at once. And she said she immediately jumped up and she was scanning the room for any type of movement, a shadow, a reflection, just something to make sense of the noise, but of course there was nothing. She said I could feel presences moving all around me. It felt like people were walking past me, and I knew I wasn't alone. She said it felt like I was standing in the room while another reality was layered over me and an entirely different dimension was bleeding into mine. And she said, I'm telling you, as someone who had grown pretty used to paranormal activity in this bar, this was the creepiest experience in my life because it did not feel harmless. And then all at once it stopped. She says the silence felt wrong. It didn't feel like silence as in everything had disappeared. It felt like things had gotten silent on purpose, like they were waiting for something. Like they were just being quiet. And then she said the window started rattling. It wasn't a gentle rattle. She said it was violent, like something was trying to get in. Before she could even process what was happening, her body went numb, and she said she can only describe what felt like hot oil being poured all over her skin. It was like a surge of energy shot through her. It was overwhelming, it was consuming, and she jumped up and ran out into the hallway. She ran down to the front desk and told the people working that something weird was going on upstairs, and some of the people laughed at her, but another girl who worked at the front desk who knew her offered to go back up with her. The time they got back up to the 7th floor bar, she said she was still shaking and she was trying to close everything out as quickly as she could. Her register was facing the door, and her coworker who worked the front desk was sitting at the bar facing the door. They were quietly talking when her coworker went silent and she stared past her at the door. She said quietly, I don't want to freak you out, but I can see him. Katie said she was too scared to turn around, but she looked at her coworker and she said, I know, just ignore him. She says she meant it because she knows that engaging is the worst thing that you can do. She kept going about her clothes the fastest that she could, but she said the entire time she felt a body pressed up against her. And the longer they ignored him, the worse it got. She said that he seemed to get angry. He was pressing into her harder. It felt like pressure was building in the air. And then she said all of a sudden that feeling turned familiar, like she knew that energy before, but it had felt harmless. Said she had to work a few shifts up there after that night because she couldn't afford to quit, but eventually she did. That presence didn't leave her alone entirely after she left. She said she still felt the sensation of being watched even when she was home. Same presence seemed to follow her around town, and she said she even saw a few practitioners about it, trying to figure out how something had attached to her. From what she gathered from seeing these different practitioners, she was told that it was a warlock, a very powerful one. One told her that all of the energy she felt, all of the spirits that she called her regulars, were energy and entities tied to him, were his captives, and they were coming to her for help. And she said she doesn't want to get too into that because she said that there's a lot of belief surrounding this. She doesn't want to put a target on herself. So I'm not sure exactly what she means by that, but she did say that what she experienced changed her and what she believes. Changed how seriously she takes what she feels. Says we always want to rationalize these things and we always want to find a logical way to explain them away. Always tell ourselves that nothing can touch us outside of what we believe and that we just freak out and that nothing is really real. But she says the truth is that many things exist outside of our understanding and they all deserve respect. She said one thing that I've realized after experiencing this and talking to all these practitioners and practicing a little bit myself now is how many people walk around with no protection and no grounding. She said they're just available for anything to attach to them. She said as a result, she started practicing grounding, protection, and boundaries. She said these things matter, especially in places like Eureka Springs, where a lot of factors make the town what it is. The water table, the limestone, the history. She says there's a reason so many sensitive people are drawn there because you can feel that energy all the time. She said she does have more information, but she is more so interested if people are even interested in what she has to say, either about what she's learned or about her other experiences. So she'll be seeing the comments. Her name is Dee Dee. Let her know.
Ghosts really can show up when we would least expect them, can't we? It's not always a dark old corridor in an abandoned building or a graveyard in the middle of the night. Sometimes it can happen to you when you're just going about your daily business and it's only later on you think, whoa, that was a ghost. So the following story I wish to share with you happened at a hotel in Whitby. Now, Whitby does have lots of folklore, but mainly associated more towards Dracula, which is, of course, fiction. But that being said, there is a lot of haunted buildings over there. That being said, though, this particular hotel, which I won't give the name away in case it freaks anybody out that doesn't like ghosts, because it's not listed as haunted, was in Whitby. So it happened about 2 years ago now. There was a couple staying there and, all had been okay throughout the night and they slept well. The husband out the duo got up in the morning to go to the bathroom, and as he was coming down the corridor, so it was a communal bathroom that you shared with the other rooms in there, as he was going down the corridor, a woman burst out of one of the other rooms and screamed at him, "I told you breakfast was 8 a.m. and then shook her head really annoyed and then slammed the door again behind her. And he thought to himself, well, how bloody rude. We didn't actually want to go down for breakfast. You don't always want to, do you? So, he did his business, went back to the room and said, one of the staff members, he's extremely rude. She's just burst out one of the rooms, frightened me to death and screamed at me about breakfast. And then the wife started to ask him, well, what did she look like? We're going to have to report her to the desk. And then that's when he started to think about it. Then she had little circular glasses, like little small ones. Her hair was up in a bun and she had red hair and wore like a smart working uniform and leather pointed boots. He noticed these very strange boots on her that he only thought about afterwards when his wife asked her who wears those in the modern day. So anyway, the pair of them thought it was just a rude member of staff. And upon checkout, the woman asked, was everything okay with your stay, etc. And they said, well, yes, it was, except for, your staff member this morning, everything else was perfect. You're going to have a word with her. And the woman's extremely confused. And they, go on to describe the encounter. And the woman says, what room did this lady emerge out of? And he says, oh, I'm not sure. Was it room number 3? He counted down his head. Indeed, it must have been. It was opposite the toilet. That wasn't a living member of staff at all. That was Agatha, a member of staff here in the 1950s. Apparently, carrying a large laundry basket down one day, she tripped on the laces of her leather boots and fell down all the steps and died upon impact. Now, isn't it strange that that was the cause of death? And that's one thing as particularly unusual that stuck out to him when he described her as these leather boots. So, upon doing my little bit of research, indeed, the staff are fully aware this place is haunted, but as a lot of older couples tend to go there, as opposed to, the tourists who love Dracula and ghosts and what have you that visit Whitby and its fantastic clifftop graveyard, they don't market it whatsoever as haunted. All I will tell you is it's right in the centre and it's a bright white building with a blue door on it. That's all I'm going to tell you, because it's not the only one, so I'm not shopping them in there. There's a few like that, but indeed, if you do happen to be staying there in Whitby in the near future, you might encounter a ghostly woman who screams at you first thing in the morning. Get down to breakfast like she says, or else.
So I got a pretty cool little glitch in the Matrix story, and it's not so much creepy as it is awesome. I just love a good glitch in the Matrix story of any kind. So the woman sharing this story says, the earrings I've owned for nearly 10 years just glitched. She actually does repairs on sterling jewelry, and 10 years ago, she purchased a whole bunch of just broken pieces of jewelry that over time she would try and repair. Among all these pieces were a pair of enameled sterling silver earrings that were missing their hooks, but they weren't quite a matching pair. They were the same shape, exact same size, same pattern underneath the enamel, but they were two completely different colors. One was an aqua color and the other cobalt blue. Also, these earrings are pretty unique looking, so I'm going to include a picture towards the end. So these earrings have been in a random box of fix-it bits for years. Every time she'd sit down to do one of her projects, she would run into them. She'd even sit there and think to herself, these would be such an easy fix, and she totally would and wear them, but they are not the same color. She said, side note, she has owned these things for longer than she's known her husband, and even he knows about them and has seen these mismatched earrings before. So about 3 days ago, she said she sat down at her bench and she went to go ahead and start working on another project, and she came across the earrings again, and guys, they freaking match now. She said all these years it was one aqua and one cobalt blue, and now they are both cobalt blue. She also said she lost her mind a little bit and then she put new hooks on them and now has a beautiful matching pair of earrings, and I will show you right here. I feel like since they're so unique looking, it would be difficult to have like a third one or something. Like, what are the chances? Anyway, she said in the past year, she has had other little glitches happen, but nothing ever with a physical object like this, and nothing that she can 100% say. She is certain that they were different, and she has a witness to corroborate that. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and if you have a glitch story of your own, I gotta hear it. And if you're new here, follow for more creepy story time.
I moved to a normal neighborhood, but on my first night there, something outside made everything go completely silent. Story time. I'm gonna go ahead and tell the story in the first person, but it did not happen to me. In the year 2012, my family and I decided to move to Mexico. The town that we moved into was extremely populated. There was street lights, there was roads, there was a lot of people around us. Nothing about it felt scary until the very first night that we spent there. The first night that we were there in the early morning, I heard what sounded like an animal panting right outside my bedroom window. Like, this animal was breathing extremely hard. What really caught me off guard was the fact that that was the only noise that I heard. It was almost like everything around me went completely quiet. I didn't hear any cars. I didn't hear any sounds whatsoever. It was just this heavy breathing right outside my bedroom window. Then I heard when it slowly started to kind of like walk away, and then I continued to hear it even like down the street, and then the sound just kind of disappeared. I was honestly too scared to even look outside of the window, and I tried to just convince myself that maybe it was just like a dog or something. Now fast forward to the year 2014. I had just given birth to my baby, and I would be home alone at night because my husband was working night shift. On one of the nights that I'm alone with the baby, I hear what sounds like clawing marks on the roof of the house. It sounded like something was like clawing its way like across like the concrete. At first I tried to ignore it until one night completely changed everything. I was up late feeding my baby like I typically did, but out of nowhere I was hit with this wave of just sleepiness. Like it was almost like I couldn't keep my eyes open. Whatever it was really wanted me to fall asleep, but I kept fighting it. And just as I'm getting ready to fall asleep, I hear a voice coming from the window, that same window where I had heard that heavy breathing 2 years earlier. The voice is coming from an older woman. And quick little side note, that window is on the second floor, so no one can just walk up to it. As I'm sitting there battling, like trying to not fall asleep, I hear the woman speaking in a different language. It's almost like she's chanting something that I can't understand. At this point, I'm realizing that I can't even move. I am being paralyzed. So I begin to pray to God, asking for his protection. This went on for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then suddenly it just stopped. I was able to move again. I ended up calling my father-in-law to come and look over the house. He came over with his 2 large dogs that normally would run outside the minute they get to my house, but this night they were scared. My father-in-law checked around the whole house and he didn't find anything. A few days later, something even stranger happened. My husband's aunt, who happens to live across the street and follows a very spiritual practice, came to me and said something completely unprompted, like she didn't know about what had happened at the house. She told me that she had seen a being outside my window, something that could change shape. And she said that ever since my baby was born, she had been praying at night to protect our home. To this day, I truly believe that whatever was outside my window that night wanted my baby. That's why it was trying to get me to go to sleep. Since then, I know for a fact that those things that sometimes we wonder about are more real than we think.
They called it Laughing Key because the beach curved like a grin and the wind through the palms sounded, if you listened really carefully, like people, children, chuckling. Legend had it that many years ago, a group of children were abandoned by their teacher on Laughing Key. They'd gone for a day trip from another island and a tsunami had hit Laughing Key so ferociously that some of the children were killed instantly. Most, however, survived, except their teacher, a man, had left the island on a tiny rowboat big enough for only one, and saved himself and left the other children there to die. Now, Laughing Key was a place you could bring your enemies, those who you wanted to take revenge on one condition. As long as they were men, the children of Laughing Key would help you. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, Jake said, his elbows resting on the railing at the bow of the ferry, shielding his eyes from the sun and watching the sea glittering like diamonds. Maya laughed. You just don't have an imagination. No, I just don't think that wind laughs. Leah stayed quiet. She closed her eyes and turned her face to the sun, enjoying the feeling of the heat beating down on it. This will be a great trip. This will be a great trip. This will be a great trip. She wasn't sure who she was trying to convince. She wasn't thrilled about spending time with Jake. They'd slept together once and he'd filmed it. Went around showing all of his stupid mates the video. They'd called her Tic Tac Tits on account of, well, I'm sure you can imagine. By the time the engine cut and the island rose out of the fog, where had that come from? Nobody was laughing anymore, just quiet, excited and sun-drunk. Their skin was bronzed and slightly red in places, a permanent sheen of sweat coating them. Summer was just getting started. Okay, Evan said softly. It is kind of perfect. Coolers full of beer and wine thudded onto the dock. Shotgun first drink, someone called. Someone grabbed the grill. A speaker crackled to life, tinny music spilling out over the water. There were 9 of them, friends of friends, some are loose and fancy-free. They swam, drank and grilled fish over a fire pit. This is the last time we're all free like this, Lena said, staring at the horizon. Don't get weird, Jake said. We're literally surrounded by beer. Nothing can ruin this day. And to a lot of people, it was a completely perfect day. Until it went dark. When the first sound came, they thought it was a prank. A laugh. Did you hear that? Someone asked. It's probably just a speaker, Evan said, though he was already turning. The sound hadn't come from the beach. It came from deeper in the island, past the sand and into the thicket of dark green trees. A child's laugh, thin, breathy, carried on the breeze. Okay, not funny, Maya said, grinning anyway. They waited. Nothing. See? Lena said. Wind laughs. Case closed. The night arrived all at once, thick and black. The speaker died with a sad little pop. Who forgot to charge it? Moans of, not me. The fire snapped and sank lower, then someone suggested a night swim. Hard pass, Maya said. I've seen Jaws. Truth or dare, Jake offered. Lena, want to lift up your shirt and show us your little tic-tacs? He laughed humorously and Lena's face reddened. Did you feel that? Evan asked, interrupting the game before it had even gotten started. Feel what? Jake said. Like something moved under the sand, something like squirming under it or something. He stood up, heart thudding. Dude, you're fine, Lena said. It's just... She stopped. Footprints led away from Evan's feet. Too small to be an adult. Those weren't there before, Maya said quietly. No, Jake said. Nope, I hate that. The footsteps led straight into the jungle. The laughter started again, only this time it felt closer. Okay, Lena said. That one wasn't the wind. We should go, someone said. Go where? Back to the dock. They should have left then. Instead, Jake said, what if someone's messing with us? On a private island, Maya said. How has it gotten so cold so fast, Lena muttered, hugging herself. I know just what you need, Jake said, standing up and dusting sand off his rear end. Come on, girl, come on. Jake slapped his knees and called her like she was a dog. She'd really had enough. She sighed. She was going to keep the pretense up until they all went to sleep, let them slip away peacefully, but Jake was begging for it. She followed him to the sounds of the others, whooping and laughing, making kissing noises, like she'd ever kiss him, she thought to herself. As she walked, she could hear the laughter. Lena watched little figures running through the trees past her. Jake was so self-obsessed he didn't even notice. She pulled her knife from the waistband of her shorts and started to run. What the? She heard Jake say as she approached. He didn't have time to say a word, barely take a breath before Lena grabbed his crotch and swiped the knife across, blindly stabbing and slicing. He screamed, so she stabbed him in the throat, and that soon stopped him. The laughter became louder and the sand shook from underneath them. Jake's bloody body began to be swallowed by the sand. Lena looked up and saw them. The children, all in a line, watching, laughing. They'd also been let down by a man. Once Jake's body had been swallowed completely, Lena stood up. She wasn't sure what she'd tell the others, but she wanted to have a little chat with them, see if they could defend themselves. None of them had stuck up for her when Jake shared that video around campus. None of them had listened to her when she told them she didn't want Jake invited. They didn't care. She'd made her decision. She wiped her bloody knife on her shorts and walked back to the beach, knife behind her back.
What would you do if you were biking home late at night and then your bike breaks and then you see a clown step out of the woods and start calling your name? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about a girl who said that back in 2016 everybody thought that it was just another clown panic story, but she says that she was chased down by something that wasn't a person. This happened in October 2016 when everybody was posting clown sightings and nobody knew what was real anymore. That's why I kept my mouth shut for a long time after. I knew exactly what people would say. Some random guy in a costume or some teenager trying to scare people. Everybody was already sick of hearing about clowns by then, so if you said you saw one, people rolled their eyes before you even finished talking. I was 17 and working closing shifts at a restaurant just outside of town. Nothing fancy, just burgers and fried food and the kind of place where the managers make you do 10 extra things before you leave. I rode my bike to work because I didn't have a car yet, and my route home went past a stretch of road I already didn't like much. One side had a few houses set back from the road, and the other side was a ditch and then woods. Not deep forest or anything, but enough that once it was dark, you couldn't really see in there. That night, I left later than usual. We got slammed at the end and then I had to help close. I remember being tired and mad about it because I had school the next morning. I made it maybe halfway home before my chain came off. At first I thought I could fix it fast, but when I stopped under a streetlight and looked at it, the chain was twisted up and hanging wrong. I got grease all over my hands trying to get it back on, and then when I moved the pedal, it slipped right back off. So I gave up and started walking the bike. I was passing the wooded part when I saw something light-colored between the trees. I only noticed it because it wasn't moving, and at first I thought it was some decoration somebody had dragged out there. Then it stepped forward enough that I could see it was a person in a clown costume. Only even then it didn't feel right. The clothes looked baggy and dirty white with dark patches on them. The face looked painted, but the white was uneven and the mouth was too red and too wide. It wasn't smiling exactly, it was more like the smile had been put there and forgotten about. It lifted one hand and waved at me. I stopped walking. I looked behind me because I honestly thought it had been waving at someone else. There was nobody there, no car coming, and the road was empty. Then it said my name. Not yelled, just said it. And the voice didn't match what I was looking at. The body was back by the trees, but the voice sounded closer than it should have. I didn't answer. I started walking faster, pushing the bike beside me. Then it said my name again, this time from much closer. I looked back and it was in the ditch. I did not see it cross the distance between the trees and the ditch. I know how that sounds, I know. But 1 second it was standing farther back, and the next it was near the road, still facing me. That was when I dropped the bike. I remember the front wheel turning once and the handlebars hitting the ground. Then I ran. At first I could hear it behind me in short bursts. Not normal running exactly, more like fast steps, and then a pause, and then fast steps again, like it was changing speed without slowing down in between. I looked back once and I wish I hadn't. It was running, but the body looked wrong doing it. The arms were bent too high and the shoulders were up, and the legs looked too thin under the costume. It moved like something trying to copy what running looks like. I kept going. Then it laughed. That was the part that did it for me. If it had just been some creep in a clown suit, I think I would still have been terrified, but the laugh sounded bad in a way I still don't know how to explain. High at first and then suddenly low in the middle, like two sounds pushed together. Then it called my name again and said, "You don't have to run. I know where you live." I was panicking. I couldn't breathe right, and I couldn't feel my hands. I veered towards the nearest house because there was a porch light on, and I thought if I could just get near, a person would stop. I made it to the gravel shoulder by the driveway and turned around. It was standing in the road. Still again, like it had never run at all. And in the porch light, I could see its face better. Its head was cocked to one side, too far over to look natural, and the eyes were completely black. Not dark makeup and normal eyes. I mean, the whole eyes looked black and too large, like there was no white in them at all. They looked wet and wide open and fixed on me in a way that made my stomach drop. And then it pointed at me. Its finger was too long, and that's such a dumb detail to get stuck on, but I did. The glove hung off it wrong, narrow and stretched, and when it moved the finger, the fabric bent in too many places. Then the clown lifted its other hand and tapped the side of its own head like it was reminding me of something. And from the ditch behind it, I heard another laugh. But I had only seen one clown. I ran to the porch and started pounding on the front door. Somebody came to the window, and the second the inside light got brighter, I looked back again. There was nobody in the road now. The homeowner opened up and let me in because I was hysterical. My dad came and got me, and the police went back with flashlights and they found nothing. The next morning, my dad drove me out there to get my bike. It wasn't where I dropped it. We found it about 20 yards further down the road near the woods, stood up against a tree. Tied to one handlebar was a faded balloon, and looped around the brake cable was a little note written on what looked like receipt paper. It said, "But I just wanted to play." I had not seen a balloon the night before, and there was no reason one should have been there at all. Nobody believed me after that. Not really. They believed I got scared, and they believed somebody chased me, but every time I got to the part where it said my name, or where I heard the second laugh, or where I found the note, people started quietly deciding I had filled in the blanks on my own. And that's fine, I get it. I just know that if it had been some guy in a costume, I think I would have been able to make sense of it by now. And I still can't. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
Let's read another scary story that was sent to us. So I think to really start out, I'd have to say I'm almost 100% sure something followed my family all throughout our lives growing up. We moved around Ontario our whole childhoods, and no matter where we ended up, something was always there. When my older brothers were little, they refused to enter their playroom and told my mom that the sideways man would watch them from inside the closet. When she asked who or what a sideways man was, they described him as a man who would stand on the wall, horizontal to the floor, watching them from the open closet door. This promptly led my mom to moving them and herself out of that house. But whatever it was didn't stop there. I remember being fairly young, maybe 5 or 6. My younger brother was around 3 or 4, and we would get in trouble from our father for leaving the closet open in one of our rooms, which would make it impossible to open the door to get into the bedroom. But the thing was, it would be left open when no one was left in the room to open it. It felt like whatever it was followed us, because our childhoods were so tumultuous. We moved a lot to get away from our less than awesome father, but he would always find us. I'm definitely a big believer in dark spirits being attracted to abusive households. I can't speak too much on what my brothers experienced outside of the sideways man, but I know my other brother and I definitely had experiences with him later on too. But outside of him, I remember being maybe 10 or so years old and playing with a Ouija board in the house we lived in a small town. I had a bedroom that sat right beside this locked door that no one had the key for, despite my uncle owning the place that we were renting at the time. My friends and I were being belligerent, trying to get something to happen, when all of the candles suddenly died. We freaked out naturally, but all tried to kind of play it cool. So we went downstairs to grab some snacks and drinks, but I had to stay at the bottom of the stairs to turn the light off. The only working light switch was at the very bottom, and when my last friend got to the top, I flicked the switch and bolted up as fast as possible. When I got up there, I noticed one of my friends just standing there in front of that locked bedroom, staring, frozen. When I turned to look, I realized it was somehow opened, and you couldn't see a thing because it was so dark, but we could hear this huffing noise coming from inside it. We ran as fast as possible and slammed my bedroom door closed, trying to get the board to say goodbye. But we just stayed in my room all night, listening to the breathing and gasping through the wall until we eventually fell asleep from exhaustion. When we tried to tell anyone in my family the next day, the door was right back to being locked and no one believed us. After that night, things just seemed to get weirder no matter where we lived. I started to experience sleep paralysis in that place that followed me into adulthood. Seeing the Hat Man was pretty common, but the one that turns my stomach to this day is I have a reoccurring sleep paralysis visitor that started in that house. It's this woman who, for some reason, no matter where I'm sleeping, I can see in my mind's eye her walking up the stairs closest to me, making her way into my room, and slowly bending over until her hair drapes over my face. I can always feel her breath, but never see her face. I'm honestly convinced that woman's spirit followed me from that house even today. That is absolutely terrifying, and it does sound like something is following her. Or maybe she's just really sensitive to the other side. And my freaking jaw dropped whenever she was talking about the sideways man who would stand on the wall horizontal. That is terrifying.
We have got to talk about this Bayside Market encounter that happened at a mall in Miami in 2024 because I feel like something weird, something potentially extraterrestrial was going on. Let's get into it. At Bayside Market in 2024, something weird happened. Now, what official police reports say versus what multiple eyewitness testimonies say are two totally different things. Many people believe that this was a potential police cover-up of some sort of extraterrestrial encounter that people had while shopping in this mall. So official reports say there was a group of about 50 teenagers that got a little too rowdy. They start fighting amongst themselves. They're even shooting off fireworks. It causes a mass panic to ensue. People are fleeing the mall, and the police promptly respond to this. But what a lot of people find a little odd, and I do have to say I also find a little odd, is the amount of police that respond to this call. I'll insert footage here from what looks to be a witness in some sort of a high-rise building overlooking the mall. It's a lot. And police also said that when this call first came in, they even thought there's a potential it could have been an active pew-pew situation. So maybe the police presence, that's logical, right? But regardless, something else that I find a little strange too, if they thought it was an active pew-pew situation, if I was law enforcement, I would also be dispatching ambulances in case there is some sort of an injury. But when you see this witness zoom into the footage here, and this is just one, perspective, there are multiple, I don't see any ambulances. It's literally just police cars. Now, all that, it could be logical. It could be explained. But here is where it gets weird. All of the eyewitnesses, the people who were shopping in the mall, have something very different to say about what police were actually responding to, and it wasn't a group of teenagers fighting. Multiple eyewitnesses claim that what the police were actually responding to were 9 to 10 foot beings that were morphing out of portals into the mall. That is what they say caused this mass panic to ensue. People describe these beings as looking shadowy or gray, and as they are like morphing out of these portals, they're even glitching, not like a computer glitch, more like a wave, if that makes sense. They seem to be sentient. They are observing people just kind of walking around, standing there. And we're going to actually watch one witness testimony. I have to say, guys, this is a very detailed testimony. It seems believable. It seems very compelling the way that he tells this story. Police were even like shooting pew-pews at them, and that as people are running out of the mall, they're seizing people's cell phones, making sure that they don't have any video footage. They are like deleting footage out of people's phones if they have it, asking people what they saw. Now, supposedly as well, all air traffic like ceased. They like, you couldn't fly like planes through there. There were a few like black helicopters, which some people say could have been like the police forces helicopters, or maybe like some sort of like federal helicopters. I'm not really sure. Supposedly as well, there were like screenshots of like mass like internet or power outages like in this particular area of Miami. The police also were out there, like literally they came back at like 3 a.m, had everything like closed down and stuff like that. It just seems like a bit of like overkill, the response for supposedly, like I said, teenagers fighting. Something else I don't quite know what to make of. I can't say definitively one way or the other. There is some footage somebody took from like an overhead perspective of what they say was one of these beings right outside of the mall doors, and it's like pacing back and forth. It is surrounded by police cars, which you can see in the footage. Now, the police say this was just a group of like 3 officers walking back and forth like together in front of the mall. Eyewitnesses, including, I guess, the folks taking this footage, say that's not what it was. It was not a group of 3 police officers. It was one of these beings. Whatever it was, it does look pretty big in this footage because it's clearly shot from like a long distance off. I can't say definitively, but it is strange. Let's go ahead and roll this witness footage, and y'all let me know what you think.
Experience and moment. So basically what happened was I was there with my brother Brian, my sister and my nephew. We were looking for shoes for my nephew, and then we see a whole crowd of people outside the store just running out in a direction. So, you know, as soon as we saw it, we were like, oh shit, you know, what's going on? So we immediately ran out with our nephew, and you know, we picked him up and we ran out and we followed the crowd, and then about like a few seconds later, as soon as we started running, my nephew, he's autistic, so he was pointing behind us and he was saying blanky, which he'll usually say whenever he feels unsafe or scared. And he was pointing behind us. So me and my brother, we look behind us, and then we see these 3 9-10 foot tall creatures. I'm not gonna say aliens. Everyone keeps saying it's aliens. I'm not saying aliens because I don't know what it was. None of us really knew everyone. All of us stopped in our track. We, you know, a whole bunch of people were pointing at it. I mean, there were other people running. You know, there was a crowd. As soon as it made itself more apparent, it looked like it was glitching, not like a computer pixelation, but like a wavy glitch. And whatever maybe was covering them had, you know, unveiled or whatever. Yeah, it looked like a glitch, man. It like a weird glitch in the Matrix or whatever. And then you could see it in its full form, all 3 of them. And then, you know, they were all black. You saw eyes, and you could faintly see like lips. But yeah, I was about like 20 feet away, because obviously everybody gave it distance, right? And you know, they're tall, so we all just like looked at them. They were just standing there, and the thing that was a little bit weird, but it was clearly like observing us. It was sentient, right? Like, or whatever. I mean, I don't know, but it was aware of us. It looked at us, the whole crowd, and then as soon as it started walking with its big legs, like kind of like it started like almost glitching again, we all ran. My brother like immediately said, yo, let's go. He grabbed me by the shoulder. We bolted out of there. And for anyone that's like saying, you know, where's the footage? Yeah, I know. I don't have any footage, and I'll explain why. Because like when I saw it, I was in complete fear. It was something that I completely froze, man. I don't care if I sound like a bitch about it. Like, I froze. And I don't care who you are. I feel like when you're seeing something paranormal, it's different than when you're seeing a fight. Yeah, you'll probably want to record that and put it on WorldStar or whatever. When you see something paranormal, that's different. Because your reality, you can't comprehend what you're seeing. A fight, you kind of get it. Two people are fighting. You can comprehend that. Something like this, none of us could comprehend. Your first instinct is like, it ain't to like take out your phone and start recording. Your first instinct is like, I've never seen this before. What is this? Is it gonna hurt me or my family? That was my first number one priority. So if you don't believe me, I get it. You know, it's fine. Like, it is silly. I'm sure that someone had footage from that night. If you did, please contact me just so like, you know, we actually have it. So anyways, as soon as the creature started moving, we all just jetted out there. We ran out the front doors. And you know, obviously, like, we see a whole sea of cop cars, mad cop cars, where other ones were coming in. And we ran with our nephew, and then, you know, a cop stopped us. You know, they took us to a bit of a safer area behind the cars. And then, and they asked us what we saw. And we told them what we saw. You know, they wrote it down, and they asked everybody to check their phones. Not everybody, because there was mad people like running away too, right? They couldn't get everyone. So I'm wondering if someone's gonna post a video. But yeah, they looked through everyone's phone. I didn't record anything, so I was fine. None of us recorded anything, so we were basically free to go. But in the distance, you could still see, like, you know, I didn't see the beings come out the door, right? But you could see on the side of the building, kind of like that clip that everyone's seeing, that it was slowly walking. And it was like, it wasn't cloaking or glitching or whatever. It was walking. So I don't know if it seemed more like it was an interdimensional thing. Someone's coming into our dimension or whatever, a bunch of them. And I think, you know, that it was just interesting, the police response, because it was a whole bunch of them. This ain't for no teenagers. No, this was for something way bigger. And it almost seemed like the cops had like a already made strategy for it, because they surrounded one of the beings with like all their police cars. They blared it up even louder because you could hear that it was louder. Maybe as an attempt to like distract it or let it know like, hey, you don't belong here, right? And you know, they were trying to like slowly move alongside with it. But I didn't see anything else after that, because me and my family, we got out of there. We went into our car, we went home, because you know, we had our nephew with us, and we went to make sure, like, you know, he was okay. So I'm still kind of like processing everything. Like, it's weird, but at the same time, I'm glad that we weren't alone in seeing it, because like it was a whole bunch of us that saw it. And it feels kind of like, you know, you're part of something like really big, but at the same time, it's confusing, because like you want to kind of like show people. Like, I wish I took a video, man, like, because people are gonna probably think I'm crazy, right? But yeah, I'm left with more questions. Like, we were all kind of left with more questions than anything else. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's aliens. I know everybody's saying it's aliens. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is I saw something come in through like a weird glitchy, maybe a portal or whatever. and it was like they were, they were pretty tall. You could see some facial. It was they were very dark, like and shiny, but I can't tell if it was like a wet shiny or like a metallic shiny. And yeah, and long limbs. Long limbs, long fingers. They were definitely humanoid in shape, and shadowy. But that maybe that shadowiness was like from a glitch or whatever, like whatever cloaking maybe they had like fell off. But yeah, it felt like something was coming into our world or whatever, like a fucking Stranger Things episode. But it was crazy, man. Like I do wish that we took video. Obviously I was scared, bro.
Y'all tell me his testimony was not compelling, man. That doesn't seem like somebody blowing smoke. I don't know. I think, honestly, at this point, regardless of whether this was a case of the internet grabbing a hold of something and it snowballing, or whether some weird Stranger Things shit actually went down in Miami Mall, it is not that far-fetched in 2026, the year of our Lord, to think that there is not life out there in the vastness of this universe that we live in. The government has literally confirmed it multiple times. So, I'm anxious to hear what y'all's theories are in the comments. Stay tuned for some more spooky stories. Also, if you're interested in shit like this, let me know and I can talk about the Las Vegas encounter next, because I think that witness testimonies from that extraterrestrial encounter and this one are eerily similar as far as like the description of what these things looked like. Ooh.
Living in a farm is genuinely so peaceful and beautiful until you start seeing scary stuff, and that's where you wish you can get your ass back to the city. It all started when the owner of the farm saw something moving behind this exact tree right here. So being sure of what she saw, she immediately pulled her phone and started recording. The thing she saw behind that tree looked like a person, but it was very pale. So this is where she was like, hey yo bro, I'm not even playing, something is behind that tree. So obviously the person next to her was in disbelief, okay? Or at least he didn't understand immediately. He was like, bro, what are you talking about? What? And if you're like, bro, we kind of agree with the other person. We can't see anything. What is she talking about? Well, here it is. She was right this whole time. This thing right here was behind that tree. This thing, whatever it is, looked like it was lurking. You know when you play hide and seek, you go like... And as soon as it got caught on camera, it got behind the tree and then disappeared.
I live in a country, not too many people know about this back here, but I'm telling you, I could have sworn I saw somebody. Oh my goodness. Hey, Zach! I could have sworn. See, Zach, there is a man over there. What? I'm not even playing.
Some people think that this is an owl, and let me tell you that there is no way in what world this is an owl. First of all, owls do not get behind trees, they get on top of it. Second thing, I've never seen an owl that moves like this in my life. And maybe there's an owl that moves like this that I just don't know about. Maybe, who knows? Other people are like, nah, this right here is basically a skinwalker. You know, creatures that take forms of other animals but do not act like them. And honestly, if you ask me, I don't know what the hell is this. I mean, the quality of this video is so ass that we don't know what the hell is going on. I mean, I'm sure as hell that not everyone can afford an iPhone 17 Pro. Not the Max though. We don't fuck with the Max. Big phones are not it. 17 Pro, 500 gigabytes. Who's flexing? Me? Definitely not, bro. What the hell? I'm flexing? Nah, bro. What the hell is he talking about? He definitely lost it.
I was around 8 years old and I saw my neighbor hanging, and I think something came back with me. So I was around the age of 8 and I lived in a neighborhood that was surrounded by terraced houses. There was this neighbor, he lived a couple houses down and he always made me feel uncomfortable. I'm not sure why. One day I was playing in my room and I was kind of by the window and I could see into my backyard and I could see into my neighbor's backyard. That's when I saw him hanging, and I didn't fully understand or conceptualize what I was looking at. I just know that it felt wrong. So I went and I told my mom, and I said the neighbor's doing something really strange. My mom knew him well. He was older. She even had a key to his house. And so we both went down to the house, and I waited outside for a moment, and my mom walked in. And then that's when I heard her scream, and then I ran in, and his body was already gone. After that, everything changed. I started to feel a constant heaviness in my chest, like something was there. That's when the noises started, and I was up playing, and I started to hear a man's voice, and he was angry. And I went downstairs to go talk to my mom, and my brother wasn't even home, so it wasn't my brother. After that, things started to spiral and get even worse. My bedroom door slammed on its own. No windows were open, no gust of wind, nothing that would have closed it on its own. I started to hear scratching that night, not on my bedroom door, but on my closet door. It was very slow, dragging sounds, and then I would hear whispering. And then the next day I would get up and I went into my closet, and there were actual scratch marks in the closet, as well as scratch marks on my legs. There was 4 of them. My mom saw everything too, and she told me just to ignore it and that it would go away, but it never went away. There was one night I woke up and I noticed in my hallway that the hallway lights were off, even though my mom didn't turn off the hallway lights, and I would hear footsteps outside of my bedroom door. And when I looked over at my door, I saw a big shadowy hand, and the fingers were kind of coming above the door frame, almost like they were wrapping around it. Ever since then, I haven't been able to sleep alone. I've been terrified, and even years later, it hasn't stopped. Fast forward to when I was 13 years old, I started to hear tapping on my window. And it was a continuous tapping. I tried to ignore it, but my dog started to even bark at it. And so I called for my brother, and he wasn't home. And so I called him on my phone, and he was nowhere near the house, so I know that it wasn't him. That night, my dad checked the house. Nothing was there. But the next day, there was a handprint on my window, and it was the same long fingers as before. Now I'm 20. I've moved houses, and just last week, I started to hear tapping on my window again. I was even on the phone with one of my friends, and they could hear the tapping too, so I know that I'm not going crazy. I've been sleeping with my door open, and now I sleep with a very long, pointy item next to my pillow because I'm worried that whatever was in my old house has followed me here.
The Pacific Northwest has this set of rules. Now, you have to understand, this is a very supernatural place. There is something in those woods. And when you go out there, you're entering into another realm. Things can and do happen. People disappear, and a lot of people have had strange experiences in the Pacific Northwest. Now, the first rule of the Pacific Northwest is that you never go into the woods alone. Whether it's night or day, you do not go out there without another person, because there's stuff in those woods that tries to lure you, that tries to draw you in. The second rule, if you're camping out in those woods, you need to keep a fire going from dusk till dawn, because it's believed as long as you have a fire well lit, nothing negative will disturb you. The other thing with camping in those woods is it's always suggested that you set your tent up facing the north. You always want to be facing the North Star, because it's believed this will protect you from negative energy. Now, the third rule, right? If you hear, you see, you feel anything, you didn't. If you hear your name being called, if you hear music, if you hear singing, right? That is not real. Do not go towards it. The fourth rule, right? If you see an orb of light, you do not follow it. It will try and lure you into the woods. You will think, whoa, what is that? That's really cool. Do not follow it. The fifth rule, right? A lot of people say when they walk through the Appalachian woods, they've encountered what they describe as some kind of portal. And it will beckon you. It will call you to come into it. But you must never, ever go near that. You need to run away. Now, the last rule, anytime you go into the Pacific Northwest, you bring a firearm with you, and you bring one bullet. And if something negative comes your way, there are 2 options. Now, this is a story that comes out of the Pacific Northwest. It was in Northern California near Mount Shasta. There was this girl, and she said her father, Douglas, he went out on a hunting trip. and he went to somewhere near Mount Shasta. Now, he had gone on these trips many times before, never had any issues. This particular time, he goes to this new area in the woods to hunt for deer. Well, he said the first thing he noticed when he was going through the woods is that there was no wildlife. He didn't see a single deer. He didn't see any squirrels or, even insects. It was just completely quiet. So that night, he sets up his tent and he makes this big, huge fire. Eventually gets tired, he goes to bed. Well, he said he awoke to something shaking his tent. And the next thing he knows, he hears people talking all around him. And he said it was just coming from the woods, like people were having full-on conversations. So he unzips his tent, he goes outside, and he notices his campfire is out. And he starts hearing noises like going through the woods. And he said that's when he's seen all of these people just walking aimlessly around the woods, around his campsite. And he said they all had their head down. They looked very out of place. And that's when he runs over to his tent. He goes inside and he grabs his firearm and he just starts, hoping for the morning. He wakes up and he says, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm done hunting. Like, this is it. So he packs up his gear and he starts heading out. As he's walking this trail back to his car, he said he just got this really weird feeling. And all of a sudden in front of him, he starts to see this foggy mist start almost appearing in what looks like a perfect circle. And to him, it looked like some kind of portal. And he hears a voice calling his name, telling him to come. And he starts to feel himself moving closer and closer to this portal. And he said, he could tell that if he were to go into this thing, he knew that he wouldn't come back, that something was going to happen to him. But he couldn't control himself. He was just so interested in this thing. Finally, he snaps out of it and he takes off running down this trail back to his truck. And he gets out of there and he tells his wife and his daughter about what happened to him. 3 months after this, he's driving down the highway. When he's going over the bridge, he has a terrible accident. The car flips and he passes away. Now, his daughter, she believes still to this day, whatever he encountered out there in the woods had something to do with it. Living next to the woods can be creepy. It's not for everyone because you will see things, you will hear things. It can get very weird. And there is a particular set of rules that if you find yourself living next to the woods or the forest, that you should follow. Now, the first rule is at nighttime, always lock your doors, always close your curtains. Also, at nighttime, never look out the window facing the woods. If you hear a knock at your door at nighttime, do not answer it, especially if it is your back door. You will see lights coming from the woods. Do not follow them. Do not try and communicate with them. Just ignore them. And the most important thing you must remember is that anything you see outside, most likely it's not real. You are not seeing it or you are not hearing it. Now, this story comes out of Tennessee. There's this man named Christian. Christian said that at one point in time, he grew up in this farmhouse that was out in the boonies. And he said they lived deep, deep in the woods, and it was a dirt road that took several miles to get to their house. And they literally had no neighbors around. Well, he said when they first moved in, there was a lot of weird stuff that would happen. For instance, the dogs didn't want to go anywhere near the woods. They would get to the tree line and they would turn around. And it was like they were afraid of something. They also noticed these deer. They would come into their yard at night and they would just be staring out into the woods like they were scared of something. And then one night, something very strange happened. So it was about 11 o'clock at night. And on the back door, they hear boom, 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 a knock. And that's when his father goes to the back door and he opens it up. There was no one out there. He said as he looked out into the woods, he started to hear screams. And it sounded like someone was in trouble. So he said he got up and him and his father went outside and they started looking around. They couldn't see anybody. So eventually they called the police. And the police came out and they searched the area. They couldn't find anyone. Well, on a regular basis, they started hearing screams outside their house coming from the woods. And every night, something would be knocking on their back door. A few times, they found the back door wide open. The other weird thing that started happening is Christian's brother started having these weird nightmares. And not only was he having nightmares, he started to sleepwalk. And he would get up from his bed, he'd walk down the hallway into the kitchen and out the back door. And right before he would get into the woods, you know, his dad or his mom would stop him and wake him up. And, you know, this happened several times. Well, eventually his father put up like a camera outside because he was trying to figure out who's knocking on the back door. And one day he looks at the video and he sees his son going out the back door. And he notices he just starts looking around like he's looking for something out in the woods, like something was calling him. And finally, you know, his father comes running out and stops him. So the father started to get really creeped out. He told Christian and his brothers and sisters, do not go out in the woods. And he said that's when one night there was a very loud banging sound coming from the back door. And it was almost like someone was trying to get in this door. So he said his father grabs a baseball bat. He goes to the back door and he opens it. And he looks around, and out of the corner of his eyes, he sees something moving in the woods. So he said his father started to make his way towards the wood line. And that's when he sees something run back further into the woods. So his father starts to go into the woods down this trail. And he said he could see this thing from a distance. And he noticed when he would kind of move, it would move. Or when he would turn to the right, it would turn to the right. Or when he would turn to the left, you know, it would turn to the left. And he said whatever he would do, whatever movement he would do, this thing would follow. And he said that's when he realized whatever this was, it was almost like looking at a mirror. This thing was copying him. It was following his every movement. So his father turns around, takes off running through the woods, gets back in the house, and tells everyone, get in the vehicle, we are leaving. And they moved that night and left everything behind in the house. And he said still to this day, he has nightmares whenever he's near the woods because he still thinks about his time living in that place. I had an experience last night that I can't really explain. You know, I tell these stories on here, but to actually experience it for myself, it's a surreal feeling. Last night, I was driving north of Peoria, and this is a very busy neighborhood, residential area. And it's about 9 o'clock at night. It was completely dark. And I think this time I was the only car on this road. And when I drive, I always scan to the left and to the right of the road to make sure that no one's got to run out in front of me. And as I scanned to the right of the road, I seen this figure, and it was running. And it had a massive, tall, curved head. It had these very stocky, muscular arms and legs. And I mean, this thing was huge. It had to be around 8 feet tall. And as this thing ran alongside my vehicle, the thing that was creepy is it was transparent. It was clear. I could see through it. It like somehow blended in with its surroundings. And all I could see was the outline of this thing. And it just ran alongside my vehicle for about 20 to 30 seconds. And it broke off onto another street. And, you know, I came home and I had to sit down because I was like, is this reality? Like, did this really happen? Is this a hallucination? And it took me a second to say, yo, this happened to you. Like, this really occurred. And, you know, I started to think about it more. You know, when people say they've seen Bigfoot, right? They always talk about how 1 minute he's there and then 1 minute he's gone. And so I wonder, can these things camouflage themselves and blend in with their surroundings as sort of like a defense mechanism? You know, a lot of animals have this ability, like chameleons and octopus and even jellyfish. So could Bigfoot be hiding in cities and towns amongst us, but we just can't see him because he's camouflaging himself and blending in with the surroundings.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you'd like to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I still don't know what walked into our house that morning, but it spoke like her, and it even smiled at us. This happened when I was 8 years old. I had exams coming up, and my school had this system where a few days before testing, they'd cancel classes so we could stay home and study. That week, I was at home every day with my mom, and she was helping me review. We were sitting in the dining room, right near the front of the house. It's actually the first thing you see when you walk in through the front door. And I remember it so clearly. It was a Wednesday morning, around 11 a.m. My notebooks spread all over the table, papers everywhere, and my mom was quizzing me. Everything felt normal. At the time, I had 2 older cousins living with us. Hannah, who was older, and Vanessa, who was younger. Both girls, both in high school. Their school was only a few blocks away, so during lunch breaks, they would walk home, eat, and then go back. Every day they had about an hour or so it was normal routine for us. They would normally get home around 11:45, so when I saw Vanessa walk in at around 11, it didn't feel too strange. Just a little earlier than usual. She came through the front door, smiling like normal. She looked exactly like herself. Same face, same posture, same voice. She greeted my mom politely like she always did, and even did the usual respectful gesture, taking my mom's hand. Nothing about it felt wrong. Not at first. Then she walked past us and went into her room, which was right across from the dining area. And that's when something small but strange happened. It was a really hot day that day. Uncomfortably hot. And Vanessa always turned the fan on the second she got into her room. Always. To the point where the fan was actually kind of broken. It made this loud rattling noise every time it started, so you really couldn't miss it. But this time, we didn't hear it. No clicking, no rattling, nothing. And I remember noticing that, just for a second, but I brushed it off. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she just laid down. It didn't feel very important in that moment, so I went back to studying. A few minutes later, Hannah came home, right on time, and my mom got up and started preparing lunch. Something simple for them, and she casually asked Hannah, "Hey, can you go tell Vanessa to go buy some tomatoes?" That's when everything shifted. Hannah looked at her confused and said, "Vanessa's not here." My mom laughed a little and said, "Yeah, she is. She just came in." And I even backed her up. I said, "Yeah, she came in earlier." But now Hannah looked even more confused because she tells us she had just seen Vanessa at school, like minutes ago, talking to her friends, still in uniform, still on campus. And she said there's no way Vanessa could have gotten home before her. So now there's this weird tension in the room, but it still feels explainable. Like someone is mistaken. So Hannah walks to Vanessa's room, opens the door, and no one's there. The room is empty. No fan running, no movement, nothing. So now my mom calls out her name. Once, twice, we check the bathroom, other rooms, everywhere, and she's just not there. At this point, it stops feeling confusing, and it starts feeling weird. I remember getting really scared, like the kind of fear where your chest feels tight for no reason, and I even started tearing up. And I think that's what made Hannah realize that this wasn't a joke. About 10 minutes passed, and then the front door opens, and Vanessa walks in. Again. But this time something's different. She's wearing something completely different. And my mom immediately asks her, "Did you come home earlier?" And she looks confused and says no. Said it was too hot outside, so she stayed at school longer and waited before walking home. And now everyone goes quiet. Because that's when we realized that the Vanessa we saw earlier was wearing the same clothes she had worn the day before. To this day, we still don't know what it was, because both me and my mom saw her. We spoke to her. She was close enough for us to touch if we wanted, and whatever it was, knew exactly how to act, exactly how to speak, exactly how to be her. Some people say it was a doppelganger, but the thing is, they're not supposed to interact like that. They're not supposed to smile, they're not supposed to speak, and they don't behave normally. But this one did. Perfectly. Others say it could have been something else. something crossing over, a glitch, another version, another timeline. I don't know. All I know is something walked into our house that morning, looked at us, spoke to us, and then disappeared right before the real version came home.
Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
I just want to give a disclaimer before I talk about this, that this is not a joke. This is actually something very serious. It's very scary for both my fiance and I. There are some nights that he is perfectly fine, and other nights that he will literally wake up in the middle of the night, like seeing images, whether it's creatures like a spider, a snake. Sometimes he'll see actual human entities, like he'll see a man standing in the corner or whatever. But before I go any further to what happened last night, I just want to do a trigger warning because this is very sensitive, and I don't want TikTok taking this down because I didn't give a trigger warning. So if you at any point feel uncomfortable watching this, please scroll. So the last thing that happened was about a month ago. Our bedroom door was open and our bathroom door was cracked, and it was dark, obviously. And my fiance saw this human-like hand, like the color of my skin, coming out from behind the bathroom door, going like up and down the door like this. Which, I mean, yeah, that was, really scary. I closed the bedroom door after, and nothing has happened since until early this morning, around 1:30 a.m. Mind you, I had taken these, so I passed out in like an hour, right? I was dreaming, and I thought in my dream I heard my fiance say, oh my God, babe, oh my God, wake up, what is that? I woke up, like literally not knowing what the heck was going on, and I look up to see my fiance going like he's just staring directly at our TV, and I'm like, are you okay? Are you seeing something again? Do you need a flashlight? So I didn't see anything, obviously. I got my phone, I shined my light, and there was nothing there. So I took my hand and I put it like right by his head, and he literally gripped my hand and just kind of like cradled it. And I did that so that he would know that I was there and that he was okay. So of course this morning comes around, and I asked him if he was okay, and he said that he did not sleep well. And I asked him this time, I always ask him to try to describe like what he saw. And what he saw and how he described it, this was the first time that it gave me like full body chills. He saw at the foot of our bed a tall man, bald, no shirt on, very skinny. His eyes were like glowing white, kind of, and I'm getting chills already. He was literally staring at my fiance, like staring at him, like this, and just smiling. So I wasn't awake for any of this, I guess, but my fiance took a pillow and literally threw it towards the TV. And this is the part that really like made my heart drop in my ass. He said when he threw the pillow, the guy didn't move. He just stood there. And then he raised his arm up like this and pointed at my fiance. I'm getting chills again. And then I turned the flashlight on, and he was gone, and my fiance was just very like heavily breathing, and I'm like, hey, you're okay, go back to sleep. I'm seriously considering wherever I can get some, saging our room, because I feel like holy water isn't gonna do this justice, especially if he saw something standing right at the foot of our bed. I'm not sure what is going on in my fiance's mind or what he's dreaming about, but it's really been freaking the both of us out. Anyway, if you have any word of advice or anything that I should really consider doing, please let me know in the comments, because I am desperate. I don't really want him to see anyone, but if I can sage, holy water, whatever I can do, salt even, please let me know.
This feels like an ET group that is a family of his. He's been a part of this group before. He actually still carries some of the characteristics of this group. The smile wasn't a smile. It's the way they look. That's the way their face is. The finger pointing was a little invasive and obviously intrusive, controlling, dominating. So we really would want to get to the bottom of that. So he would want to reach out to someone like me. Doesn't have to be me, but someone like me who can intervene, because he's going to be emotional, obviously. So we want someone to intervene and say, listen, is it okay for you to be here? This is someone also who already was born with a very strong psychic skill set. He came in with a very strong psychic skill set. We all have psychic skill sets, but some of us come in with them louder and stronger, whether we kind of want to see them or feel them or not. He did. Those things he was seeing before, like the snake and the spider, this was all kind of gearing up, lining up for him to this ET to make its entrance. This is a family he was a part of in another life. It feels like actually a future life. So because there is a relationship there, what will empower him is to be aware of that relationship. What does that mean? What do I want to do with it? So he can take control of the situation and say, listen, not this time. Or, what do you have to say? Let's talk. What is it that you want me to hear or know or understand? We are having an influx of these ET groups landing on Earth right now. I will speak later on what that means for us. They aren't a low vibration. I would say they're low to medium. They're trying to raise their vibration slowly. There's this still control factor. That's obviously a lower part of them. Feels like a FR42, the sun, and there's the sun and then the planet at a diagonal. So like if the sun is here, their planet is like down, if that makes sense. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. It's like a FR32. There's a 0 in there, but I think there's a dash. 0. Also on our Patreon, there's a lot of conversations around this. Most of these groups landing are dark because the higher vibration beings don't land on Earth. Earth is very polluted and is a lower vibration. So they will stand back and watch. Assist, but they will not interfere. Free will. Free will means that you have the choice to raise your vibration or not. And if you do not choose to raise your vibration, then angels, beings, guides are not going to intervene. They're not going to push you. They're not going to force you to learn if you don't want to learn. So this is why higher vibration aliens don't just come in and quote unquote save us. They're allowing us individually and as a group to choose to raise our vibration or not. That can only begin with us individually first. Then it seeps out to those that we know, community, globally. 5 steps of consciousness will be down here also. That's how you raise your vibration. You don't need to spend money to do it. You are welcome to DM me or email me if you have any questions at all about the 5 steps to consciousness. I am here to help. I will not charge for that. Ultimately, this is a bigger conversation, longer conversation for them.
Last photo cases scare me on a whole new level. Like the cases where someone disappeared without a trace, but we have video or photographic evidence showing what their last known moments looked like. And this case is the perfect example of that. Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon were 2 young Dutch women who both disappeared in April of 2014 while hiking together in Panama. They had set out on a popular trail through the Panamanian jungle, and a local restaurant owner's dog named Blue accompanied them on part of their hike, as he did often with tourists. But when the dog returned to the trailhead without the girls, speculation that something sinister happened to the pair started to spread. When the girls never showed, extensive searches for them began, but no trace of them was found until 10 weeks later. In June, a backpack belonging to Lisanne was found near a riverbank. Inside the backpack was a camera containing over 100 photos. Image number 508, timestamped at 1 p.m., shows Chris crossing a small stream, and then 90 images taken in pitch black darkness during the early morning hours of April 8th. Unknown to early search crews, the girls had repeatedly tried calling emergency services, with 77 attempts in total, starting at 4:39 p.m. all the way back on April 1st, meaning that if the photos were taken by the girls themselves, we know that they survived in the jungle after some sort of emergency for at least 7 days. One of these images, timestamped on April 8th at 1:49 a.m., shows the back of Chris's head. Some believe that she may have blood near her temple, Others say this isn't actually the back of her head, but an outline of her face. Even more mysterious is missing photo 509. It doesn't appear in the memory card's file structure, raising questions about whether it was deleted intentionally, corrupted, or never existed in the first place. Locals also claimed that the day prior to the backpack being discovered, it most certainly wasn't in the area it would be found. They also found Chris's denim shorts carefully laid out on a boulder, which seemed to be done intentionally. More searches along the river near where the backpack was found unearthed a foot in a boot, a piece of a pelvis, and various other bone fragments. DNA confirmed these as Chris and Lisanne's remains. Forensic scientists found that Chris's bones appeared bleached, and the condition of them didn't match local soil conditions. Panamanian authorities initially classified this case as a homicide and then an abduction. But by March of 2015, the case was formally closed, with the explanation that both women died during a hiking accident. But there's still debate online about what actually happened to the girls. Did they get lost and die of exposure? Did one of them get injured and needed help? Or did something more sinister happen?
Did you know that one of the most common ways that a spirit will try to communicate with you is through your phone? It takes very little effort, and this could be either via text or a phone call. Story time. For the sake of the story, let's call her Lucy. So Lucy's mom passed away on a Tuesday. On a Wednesday, she received a phone call. When she picked up the phone, she very distinctively heard her mom's voice say, "Lo, Lo, Lo," and then hung up. Lo is the nickname that Lucy's mom had for her. Lucy's mom was also the only person that would ever call her Lo. What Lucy heard was definitely her mom because she had that very distinctive New York accent, and it was her voice. 2 weeks after that phone call, one of her mom's bracelets just flew across the room with absolutely no explanation. This actually took place in front of 2 witnesses. Story number 2. My aunt passed away when she was in her 50s. She actually ended up outliving both her mom and dad. Every morning at about 7 a.m., my grandmother would always receive a phone call from my aunt. After she passed, this of course stopped until one day at exactly 7 a.m., her phone rang. When she looked at it, the caller ID said that it was my aunt calling. She of course answered, but all she could hear was just static coming from the other end. She repeated my aunt's name over and over again just to see if she could hear anything, and the line just disconnected from the other side.
Most of us have had a friend who didn't treat us right, but what Suzanne Capper experienced goes way beyond that. It goes beyond humanity. Suzanne was a sweet, gentle 16-year-old girl from Greater Manchester who just wanted to belong. She didn't have a stable home growing up, so when a woman named Jean Powell opened her front door, Suzanne stepped right in, grateful, trusting, and completely unaware of what that decision would cost her. One day, while Suzanne was just minding her business at the house, a bunch of Jean's friends who also crashed at the house started blaming her for giving them lice. And Suzanne, confused by this absurd statement, is like, "What? Head lice? I don't have that. What are you talking about?" But still, even after her denying it, nobody in the house was believing her. They just kept calling her disgusting and a pig. So she ran out of the house, probably crying, and decided to stay at her stepfather's house to get herself away from everybody. But after a few days of Suzanne isolating herself, Jean and one of her friends, Bernadette, started getting really bored around the house. Because you see, this wasn't like the friends who mess with each other as a joke group dynamic you think it is. Jean and her friends, Bernadette, Glenn, Anthony, Jeffrey, and Clifford, all found entertainment by bullying Suzanne. They'd basically take advantage of her kindness and use her as a punching bag. But Suzanne didn't really stand up for herself either. She was just really thankful to even be considered as part of their friend group, despite how mean they are to her. So one day, Jean and Bernadette came up with this hilarious prank to pull on Suzanne. But because she was still at her stepdad's house, they kind of realized, well, we need a way to lure her back to our house. So the whole group started plotting, and that's when they come up with an idea. Jean and Bernadette went out to Suzanne's stepdad's house and knocked on the door. And when Suzanne opened it and saw Jean standing there with Bernadette, she probably asked, "What do you want?" And very kindly, they both told her, "Well, we just wanted to let you know that someone at our house is looking for you. I think it's the boy that you like. Remember him? And Suzanne, elated by this, probably said, really? Oh my gosh, then let's go. So she closed the door behind her and they all walked back together to Jean's house, not knowing that Jean and Bernadette just successfully completed step 1 to luring her out of the house. When they finally got to the house, Bernadette is telling Suzanne, you should go through the door first, since, I mean, he is technically waiting for you. And so, not thinking much of it, Suzanne grabs the door handle, pushes the door open, and yang! Suzanne's body gets pulled inside and shoved to the ground. And before she could even realize what is going on, the sound of razors clicks on and something fuzzy is falling down onto her lap. It's her hair. They're shaving her hair off. Suzanne is screaming, trying to scramble to her feet, but hands are pressing her down. Multiple sets of hands. And the razor keeps going. Jean is laughing, Bernadette is laughing, Glenn, Anthony, Jeffrey, Clifford, all of them are circling around her like this is the funniest thing they've ever seen. And it was all because they wanted payback for her giving them head lice, which, mind you, wasn't even proven. And when it was finally over, Suzanne's head is nearly bald. She's sitting on the floor, trembling, surrounded by clumps of her own hair, and nobody is helping her. You must be another level of evil to set up your friend like that. But here's where it gets darker, because this wasn't the end of the prank. This was just the beginning. They started yelling at Suzanne, saying, well, look at this mess of hair you made. Clean it up. And without any choice in the matter, she was forced to pick up her own hair off the floor as if she were the reason it was there. And then afterwards, they beat her, going back and forth with their fists and suffocating her with a plastic bag, but taking it off right before she passes out so that they can keep taunting her. And when it was over, Jean locked her in a cupboard for the rest of the night, where Suzanne screamed until morning. When the next day came, the group got so tired of hearing her screams all night that they made a decision that tells you everything you need to know about how far gone they already were. They moved Suzanne to Bernadette's old house just a few buildings down, where they knew they wouldn't have to worry about hearing her screams. They then stripped her down in such an intrusive way, they tied her spread eagle to an upturned bed frame using electrical wire, ropes, belts, and chains. Then they stuffed a whole bunch of dirty socks into her mouth to try to muffle out any more screams. And then they left her there. As Suzanne laid there, laying on top of barbed wire in excruciating pain, she's now realizing the reality of her situation. Her so-called friends are keeping her held captive. But through it all, Suzanne kept thinking that maybe if she cooperates the way that they want, then they'll stop. They'll get bored of me and let me go. But that is not what happened. Over the next several days, Suzanne suffered through torture unlike anything a human should ever endure. The group, most of them high on a whole bunch of substances, came in and out of that house over and over again, beating her, burning her with cigarettes all over her body, injecting her with drugs against her will, and at one point pulling her teeth out with pliers and leaving her nerves completely exposed. At some point, they shoved her body into a bathtub filled with concentrated disinfectant, and they scrubbed her cut up skin with a yard brush. And through all of it, through every single session they would do, Bernadette would walk into that room and taunt her by saying the same thing before she started. Chucky's coming to play. Bro, that is demonic. Now, here's the part of the story that really haunts me the most, and I need you to sit with this for a second. At some point during those 5 days, a man named David Hill came to the house. He walked in and saw Suzanne. He saw the condition that she was in, tied to the bed frame, injured, barely able to speak. And Suzanne looked at him and begged him for help. She said, please untie me. Please, can you help me? But David looked at her and said, I can't. I'm sorry. I don't want them to get mad at me. And he left the house without saying a word. Suzanne stayed tied to that bed alone, knowing that someone had just seen her and still chose to walk away. I think about what that moment must have felt like for her more than I probably should. And it breaks my heart because all she ever truly wanted was to be loved back. Why is life so unfair? I don't understand. 5 days later, on December 14th, in the early hours of the morning, the group decided that it was time to get rid of her. I guess they got bored. So they forced forced Suzanne into a car and drove her 15 miles out to a stretch of countryside on the outskirts of Stockport. Suzanne hasn't seen the light of day in what feels like forever. She's weak, she's exhausted, and somewhere in the fog of everything that her body has been put through, a small, desperate thought starts to form. Maybe it was over. Maybe they're done. The car has been moving for a while now, and she can't see where they're going, but the motion itself feels like relief. Maybe they're taking her somewhere, dropping her off and walking away from all of this. But then the car stops. Before Suzanne can make sense of anything, Bernadette yanks her out and shoves her down an embankment on the side of the road, her body tumbling in the dark, hitting the cold earth at the bottom. And then she smells it. The sharp, pungent smell of petrol already soaking into her clothes and skin before she could even react. Bernadette is standing over her, pouring it, emptying the whole container of fuel onto her body. And when it's finally on its last drop, she throws it to the side, grabs a lighter, and clicks it on. But it doesn't flame up, so she clicks again. But it still won't go. And I think in this moment, a sane person would take this as a sign that, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe this is crossing the line. Just let her live. But no. Not for Bernadette or Jean or the whole group for that matter. She yells back to the group and says, "Hey, this dumbass lighter isn't working. Let me get yours." And they toss her a new one. She catches it, clicks it on, and the flame just glows in between Suzanne's eyes as she stares at Bernadette for any type of mercy. But Bernadette smiles at her and whispers, "Burn, baby. Burn," before lighting Suzanne's entire body up into scorching flames. The group gets back in the car and drive away as they watch Suzanne burn on the side of the road. But little did they know how much fight Suzanne had left in her, because despite everything they put her through, she was still here. The flames eventually burned out, and Suzanne Capper was still alive. Broken, barely breathing, but alive. Like her body refused to let them have the last word. She managed to use her last bit of energy to crawl up to the side of the road where a few men driving past spotted her and stopped. What they saw when they got out of their car was something that they have never been able to forget. Her hands looked like ash, her legs were raw meat, and her feet were so badly charred that they were almost unrecognizable. And yet, despite how much pain she was in, she was still thanking them, politely and quietly thanking these strangers who stopped to help her. That detail alone should tell you everything you need to know about who Suzanne Capper really was. A truly just loving and kind person. When she was rushed to the hospital, Suzanne did something absolutely remarkable. While she was in and out of consciousness, she found the strength to give the doctors the names and addresses of all 6 of her attackers. Every single one of them. And not long after, she quietly slipped into a coma, and Suzanne never woke back up. Suzanne Capper died on December 18th, 1992 at Withington Hospital, surrounded by her parents and people who truly loved her. She was only 16 years old, you guys. 16. All 6 of these worthless clumps of cells were tried and convicted, with Bernadette, Jean, and Glenn receiving life in prison with a minimum of 25 years. Anthony, who was only 16 at the time, received a minimum of 18 years. Clifford received 15, and Jeffrey received 12. Suzanne Capper just wanted somewhere to belong. She deserved so much better than the people that she found. So please remember her name. I will see you next time. Mwah. Group hug.
In British Columbia, there's a map of unidentified human remains of various people found across Vancouver Island. There's body parts that have been found but never have been successfully connected to a specific missing person's case. And in British Columbia, but on that island specifically, the amount of people who go missing is insane, and it's not a new thing. Forensic analysis have tracked unsolved disappearances heavily from the 1980s to the present day, some even dating back to the 1950s. What is going on in that island? Let's talk about just one of those unsolved disappearances. It takes us back to March of 1991, when a 4-year-old little boy vanished. Michael Wayne Donahue was born May 12th of 1986 to his parents Crystal and Bruce. He also had a baby sister named Caitlin. At the time of his disappearance, he was only 4 years old, almost 5, with his whole life ahead of him. March 24th was a Sunday, and that day has been on constant replay in Crystal Donahue's mind ever since. She was on her way to a Sunday football game with her entire family. It was a windy afternoon, but a pretty normal Sunday on Vancouver Island, and Crystal was playing in a women's flag football game at Blanchard Elementary School. Bruce, her husband, Michael's father, was also there to watch, and he had Caitlin, Michael's little sister, with him as well. But Michael was a 4-year-old little boy. He really didn't have any interest in watching the football game. He wanted to play. The school playground was right there, just steps away, perfectly visible from the field. Michael's asking to go play. Crystal's hesitating. Meanwhile, she's zipping up his hoodie because it's a windy day outside, and eventually she just gives in. She says, okay, you can go play in the playground. I'll watch you from here. Just wait right there. Do not move, and Daddy will come get you in a second. Michael ran off to the playground, and that was the last time Crystal or anyone who has ever come forward would see Michael Donaghy ever again. He disappeared in what felt like seconds. He was last seen around 12:30 p.m. just after the family arrived at the field for the game. Shortly after he went to go play, Bruce went to check on him, and he wasn't there. As soon as Crystal looked over as well and didn't see him, every adult stopped. About 50 people started spreading out looking for Michael, calling out his name. His parents called the police immediately because Crystal just had a really bad gut feeling, and she wasn't gonna let any time pass by without knowing where her son went. But it made no sense because it was a school playground. It was Sunday afternoon. The area was full of families and people that were there to watch the game. There were people everywhere, and yet minutes passed. They turned into hours, and there just seemed to be no witnesses in Michael's disappearance. Not a single person saw what happened, at least not anyone that has ever come forward. He was just there, and then he wasn't. Pretty quickly, police classified the case as an abduction rather than a missing child's case because of how quickly they noticed that he was missing. And because he was only 4 years old, he couldn't have run off and gotten that far away on his own. And all detectives from the Victoria Police Department were called in. Pretty quickly, tips started coming in, hundreds of tips from across North America. And at that time, they had to be written out on paper and sorted out manually because remember, 1991, there were no digital tip systems, no CCTV cameras on every corner, no Amber Alert. There was only so much they were working with. And when the hours turned into days and then into weeks and then into months, authorities continued following every tip and interviewing possible witnesses around the area. And one detail kept coming up. The only witness report really that police were able to uncover was from someone who described a strange man in his either late 40s or late 50s with a brown van near the playground. A month after Michael's disappearance, police staged a recreation of that day at the elementary school, hoping that having the community walking through might make someone remember an important detail that could help them out in the investigation, but it didn't. And with only a description of a suspicious brown van, eventually the case went cold, and it is still unsolved to this day. In 2006, reports of a man who physically resembled Michael and had been living in British Columbia ever since 1990 came up, but DNA testing confirmed that he was not Michael. In 2009, police in Milwaukee, Wisconsin found a missing persons poster with Michael's face on it at the home of a man named Vernon who had confessed to a psychiatrist that he had information in relation to a missing children's case. But he passed away from natural causes before investigators could fully explore that lead. In 2011, police were notified of a man living in Chase, British Columbia who looked strikingly like Michael, but again, DNA testing confirmed that he was not. But Crystal already knew. She has said, "Show me a picture and I will tell you," saying that she thinks, being a mother, she would recognize her own son. When Michael Donaghy was last seen, he was wearing a blue hooded jacket with red lining and red cuffs, a teenage Ninja Turtles t-shirt with multicolored rugby pants and blue sneakers. If he is still alive today, Michael Donaghy would be 38 years old, and his family has made it more than clear that they will never ever give up on looking for Michael. And the reason why I wanted to bring attention to this case is not only for Michael Donaghy and the Donaghy family to keep receiving the attention and the awareness that they deserve, but also because Michael Donaghy isn't the only child or person who has disappeared on Vancouver Island in Canada. Children, hikers, tourists, locals have been vanishing on Vancouver Island for decades and at a rate that is more than double the national average, and it feels impossible to get any answers to any of these cases. And obviously so many families have been affected by these disappearances. There are so many questions in the conversation regarding this. Why are so many cases unsolved? What do they have in common? Why on that island? There has been talk of possible cult connections. Some people blame it on the wilderness. Others think that it might be the same person responsible who just hasn't been caught. Who knows? But the film that is in theaters today was just released today. It's called Hunting Matthew Nichols, and it's inspired by these events. And I want you guys to know the reason why I think these kind of films are important to watch and talk about, especially this one because it's inspired by these events and that island, is because the more that people know about a case or a location or an unsolved mystery or mysteries, plural, the more likely it is that the right conversation will be brought up and that maybe something will come up that will help solve a real case. You never know these days with the power of social media and technology and films like these that bring awareness. I think it is so incredibly helpful in making sure that unsolved mysteries do not stay unsolved. It's also an incredible film, and I really encourage you guys to watch it this weekend in theaters. But yeah, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know if you've ever heard of Michael's case or any other missing persons case on Vancouver Island. Let me know if you guys watch Hunting Matthew Nichols in theaters this weekend. I want to know your thoughts on that as well. And yeah, thank you for spending time with me today. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.